Grand Rising, everyone. Today is 16 March 2025. And before us, the ancestors have set a table of wisdom for us to feast from. So during the course of that feast, it is our desire to get the understanding that's being provided to us. So I began by asking, are there any questions in regards to anything that that has crossed your mind, or anything that we talked about in yesterday or before? Any questions?
Yes, good morning, Pastor. Good morning, family.
Good morning, Good morning, Joey.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. This is Jesus.
Oh, Grand Rising.
Grand Rising. There you go. See there? Iron sharpen iron. Iron sharpen iron.
You were just trying to trick them, that's all.
But I did have an opportunity to see the podcast yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be on, but I did wanted to share about, the ash circle with regards to the book, The Spirit of Intimacy. And I related to an experience that I had when I was in Phoenix, Arizona, with the World Peace Conference. And it was talking about how the Navajo Indians, how they dealt with hardships or crucibles in terms of bringing healing, to the people, was that basically, they had an inner circle where they would gather, and there would be the elders who were part of the final decision with regards to how to deal with mediation. And when I say mediation, I say it from a standpoint that in Western society, when we look at making decisions, it's punitive. It's about, you know what I mean?
Hold one second, George. Hold 1 second, please.
Yeah,
Would
go
you
ahead.
make sure your phones are muted? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, and so in Western society, it talked about punitively, how do we discipline someone? How do we chastise someone? How do we, make a decision? And what was interesting in terms of this Navajo healer, he said what they would do is gather in a circle, the elders would be there, and along with, the person who may have committed the crime or committed the act, the defender, the person who was, was victim. And at the same time that they would have a fire in the center of their circle, and then they would basically have their time of listening. But what was interesting in reference to the ash circle, it made me kind of think about that in terms of nothing new under the sun. But I just wanted to share that in terms of me watching a podcast, because that was their way of addressing, their family, in a way that if someone was out of bounds or whatever the case may be, that's how they dealt with it, by having a circle. And so when you have fire, after the fire, there's ashes. So I was just trying to reflect on that. So I just wanted to share my thought about the ash circle, from that perspective. I'm done. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments about what was presented just now? Thank you for sharing that. It says to us that other indigenous people adhere to some of the same cultural events that we do, seeing as though they probably learned them from us anyway. Are there any other questions or comments?
Grand Rising, everyone. This is and I don't have a question. I just wanted to share something. A dream in my head. Is this okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. I had this dream on yesterday morning. So I was in a house or something, and I was coming out. The people that was inside. I didn't know anyone in there So I was telling them that I was coming outside to go out there and check the soil, to get some soil. So I was headed out to get the soil, but it didn't have no walls. It was just like out. So I just remember going up, stepping up on something kind of like a boat thing or something like that, but not shaped like a boat. And I went up and I was looking at the soil, and the soil was kind of felt like putty, like. So I said, okay, I got to go get some water. So as I stepped down, it was a man. I don't know who the man was. He told me that where I was standing, he said, where you're standing, you're safe. He said, but be careful at the high tides, because the high tides will come and snatch you up or take you up. But when I looked around, I said that, and I saw where I was standing. I
And
was
hold 1 second, Angela. Please, 186, would you please mute your phone? Jamil, would you mute 186, please? Thank you. Okay, Angela.
yeah. Where I was standing, I was in water, but the water was like below my feet. It wasn't even above my feet. So when I looked around, I seen water, but the water was like kind of like the waves kind of jumping up, but it was in the same distance, like you looking up the street, but not far where you had a close view. So I turned around, and I was looking, and I was headed back in to get the water. And I heard somebody say, high tide, it's high tide, they don't snatch somebody up or they don't took somebody up. So when I was going in, the lights were off, but I seen, to me, it wasn't a star, but it looked like a star, and it was just shining, and it was a woman, she was crying, and she was saying something like her daughter, and I heard a voice say, I didn't see anybody, but I heard the voice say, oh, Mom, it's all right, Mom. Okay, I'm okay. I did whatever I was supposed to do. And then the light just flicking. So I don't remember. After that, I seen some a figure in like white pants or something, but I don't know if that was the same person. And as I was waking up from the dream, I heard this phrase say, I spread the moon. And I was like, I spread the moon. So I kind of looked it up, but yeah, that was the what was shown to me yesterday morning.
Question, Angela.
hmm
You said that, okay, Mom, that I have finished or has done my purpose or whatever. Is that pretty much what you're saying? That the child said,
Yeah, that was the voice. It was like a childlike voice, but that's what the voice. She was like happy, like the voice. Oh, Mom, oh, Mom, it's okay. I did whatever I need to do.
okay,
I did whatever I need to do here. Yeah.
was that a death?
Huh?
Was the child drowned or dead or?
It was the high tide. Whatever the high tide was. As soon as I was turning around, and when he was telling me that where I was standing, he said, I'm safe where I was standing. When I turned around, I seen the water, but wasn't that man I didn't see when I was out there. So when I was coming back, as far as I could see, I was the only one out there. And then I just heard that voice say somebody got snatched up. They don't snatch somebody up in the high tide.
Okay. Thank you. Now, what did it mean to you?
Now, the part that I got that for me was that where I was standing, I was good. Continue on doing what I've been doing. I don't change anything or nothing like that. That's the part that I got when he told me that where I was standing, I was safe.
So you're saying they told you to continue your journey?
I'm just saying that's what I got out when he was saying where I was standing. Yeah.
Just asking for clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So was it telling you to stand, or was it telling you to continue your journey? Which one was it? Or both? I don't know.
I would say both, because that's how I look at it is, yeah, continue where I'm standing at. So if I'm in a place and and I'm safe, I'm not going to step out and go somewhere where I'm not safe, or I'm on the right journey, I'm on the right path. I'm doing what I need to do. Just keep on. So that's how I received it in that way.
Okay, thank you.
hmm
Any questions or comment about what Angela said?
Esther, Grand Rising family, this is Kathy. I'm curious about the phrase reading the moon. Because I was doing some study yesterday from the book that Ron read from, and it was talking about the moon and the body and the physical effect it has on the woman. And I find it interesting that that phrase was used in her dream. And I just want more insight as we move forward today on the moon and the effect of the woman and her menstrual cycle and just the whole lunar phases and what all of that does. But of all the celestial bodies, it said you just spread at the moon, and I've never heard that phrase before. And I'm just wondering if anyone has any insight on what that could possibly mean.
I am curious as to that meaning as well. However, I found it interesting in regards to that, Kathy, that she said that a man was there who said for her to stay where she was, but the voices she heard was feminine. And at the end, it was talking about spreading the moon. So my question becomes, is that a recognition by masculinity that changes the mindset of masculinity when it comes to a menstrual cycle? Because most women have to endure the guilt feeling that's perpetrated towards them from men about their menstrual cycle. It's like, oh my God, your period on again. That kind of attitude. And I have comments from that perspective. But I do think that it was speaking to the menstrual cycle, and I do believe that it is ripe for discussion because of the way it's viewed, and because it's totally misunderstood by making it a negative process when in reality it is a divine process. So
I
anyway,
I have a question for Angela, if I may.
of course.
I just wonder, how did you feel immediately afterwards? Did you feel frightened? Did you feel energized? Did you feel confused? Or what were your first thoughts? What came to you?
You talking about after I awakened?
Yes.
I wasn't fearful because to me the voice of the lady was more like frantic, but the young voice wasn't. So I didn't feel confused. I was just at the end where I spread the moon. It really didn't make no sense to me, so I didn't blow it off. But as far as I wasn't fearful or confused. I just knew it was something in there, but I didn't understand all of it. But yeah,
What does spread the moon mean to you in the dream?
it was when I was like coming out of it, and I could hear a voice within say, "I spread the moon." So it didn't. It was nothing that I seen in the
Okay.
nothing that I seen in there as far as to the moon. But I just know it was light outside when all this was happening. But when I went into the room, it was like the light. There wasn't no lights on. It was just that the light blinking. So I don't know if that's where the person was standing. I can't say it was a girl. I just heard a childlike voice. So
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
And Angela, when did you have the dream? Sorry, this is Audrey.
I had it yesterday morning.
Um,
I was
I
going to yesterday, but I didn't.
Okay, I just wanted to interject that there was a lunar eclipse on overnight on Friday night. I wonder if that had anything to do with your energy in terms of your dream.
Audrey, that was the red moon.
And I'm just wondering, I don't know.
Audrey, was
Yeah.
that's the blood moon?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it's becoming clearer now.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello.
Sheldon or Barbara, which one?
Oh, well, I just had a question for Angela. What does, prior to this, what does the moon mean to you? When you think of the moon, how do you look at it? What resonates? There is no wrong answer. It's just how do you, I guess, not so much feel about the moon, but what does that bring up inside of you personally? How do you look at the symbol or identify with the moon?
I look at the moon as a form of enlightenment. A form of enlightenment, and I often do go out, and try to look at the moon. But I see it as in enlightenment. I see it as a part of it's connecting that connects with us who we are. Yeah.
Okay. I asked that question because often when there are symbols in our dreams, the meaning of that symbol in terms of trying to understand it is based upon what those symbols bring up from deep within us, as in a sense of communication, but a special communication that is, I don't want to say solely ours, but is definitely a very personal thing. And so what you think of from your subconscious of the moon and what that conjures up, what that brings up deep from within you, that is where, in a sense, the message that is being given comes from. It's a deeper part of you, in a sense, as of language. So again, that's what that means is going to be rooted in. Okay. In all of us trying to understand as well as you trying to understand yourself. Finish.
Thank you. And someone else was about to speak, Ms. Sheldon.
Pastor, this is Linda. I was wondering about, it seems like it was some kind of sacrifice when she talked about they had taken another one. So is that some form of sacrifice?
I don't think it is. My thinking was in a different direction than that, Linda. My thinking was the message was tied to the blood moon, and the blood moon tied to the ministration process, and the whole idea of it with the agony of the female was attuned to what the discomfort that females have had to endure during the menstrual cycle because of how they were treated during that time. If you look in the scriptures, it says that they were excised from the village and away from men. And if you look at the young lady, or the young voice that she heard, then maybe what I'm thinking is that that was a message saying that the understanding of the wisdom of the ministry cycle had become made us aware of its sacredness. Does that make sense, Lynn?
It does.
Thank you.
So, Pastor, I have a question then. As we look at this, I was not aware, and I appreciate Audrey sharing with us that had been an eclipse. But from studies in the past, anytime there has been, like, especially a lunar eclipse, it has always had, in some cases, some form of effect on the human psyche. And so, hence, that's where the word, because it used to make people act a certain way, that's where the word lunatic came from. So I'm wondering, with the eclipse taking place and all of these things happening, was that a message to us that, you know, you're not far out in left field, you're not out here by yourself, you're not off course, and don't think you're missing the mark, because that's what Angela said she walked away with. But I find that very ironic that the moon and all of these things came into being, it came into play, and there was when I'm hearing the water going out to get soil consciousness, there is a lot of spiritual symbolism in the entire dream. But if you pick it apart and start with the spreading of the moon and look at that too, the last thing that she heard before awakening, I just wonder, was it tied directly to that eclipse to let us know we are more grounded than we've ever been and stay the course, which is what she walked away with from it. But I just think there is a correlation between the eclipse and the dream happening right at this time. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think that also, this is one of the things that we have to deal with. And the reason I say that is because it's no coincidence that anything comes to us, or that the visions that are brought to us, they are not coincidental. I want to talk about this, the moon in relationship to ministry cycle, because I do believe that the view of the ministry cycle, the response to them, must be corrected from what it has been in the past. However, I do see totally what you're talking about, Kathy. And if you would like to explore that further, I'd be most appreciative. And if there is someone who I want to add or to raise questions about what was just said, I also would appreciate that.
You say explore it further. You're saying do what now?
Yeah, can you illuminate that a bit more?
Well, that was just the enlightenment that I've had, because I looked at that a very, very long time ago. I was just amazed to find out that the phases of the moon has a direct effect on the human psyche and how humans behave. And like I said, in some instances, for lack of a better term, a lot of people, and I don't know, I don't have the numbers or research or anything like that, would have, it had an adverse effect on them. And they would act in ways that people thought they were crazy. And that's when they termed that phrase, you're acting like a lunatic or so. Yeah. And I just find it very interesting how grounded and rooted we are in everything that we're learning right now, and understanding the importance of our existence in time, space, all of these things, and the meanings behind the spiritual meanings behind the celestial creations, and our reaction and how we move with them. I just find that I'm thinking that what she pulled, and I this is me feeling strongly that what she pulled from that is the message to all of us to stay the course, because we're right on track for where we need to be, and opening ourselves up to see even more. And don't think you're crazy. Don't be afraid. Don't shy back from the spiritual events that's going to continue to manifest in our lives. Stay the course. That's what I'm pulling from this and listening. Because like I said, water means it has a spiritual meaning. Soil has a spiritual meaning. I mean, the whole thing, I just see a lot of symbolism in this whole thing, and I just wanted to share that. I don't have any further insight other than that, unless someone else has something they would like to add.
Thank you.
I have an observation, uh, if I may. It's one thing I didn't want us to skip over is the voice, one of the voices that spoke. Angela said she didn't know if it was male or female, but it sounded childlike. Anybody getting any thoughts from that?
Uh, Mine was, as I said, relative to what was happening, that the mindset of humanity, especially men, have changed to a greater understanding and embracing of the minister cycle. That voice is saying, I've done what I was supposed to do. Then it speaks to the spreading of the moon, um, which spreading talks about unfolding. So could this be that there are the understanding of this concept of this reality, rather, of minister cycle relationship to the moon's influence, the understanding of it being unfolded to us. I've done what I was supposed to do. I have unfolded it. And then when she talks about um, the spreading of the moon, is talking about unfolding the mistress of the moon. That's how I see it, Ron. What do you
Okay.
think?
I like that. I can see that. I just thought that was interesting. I like the fact too. Child tells me that speaks of immaturity, and there's a lot more to learn. There's more to be seen. There's more to become. Uh, the journey is not over yet. So yeah, I can see everything that you say.
Thank you. The word lunatic comes from the Latin, which translates lunaticus, which translates as moonstruck. And it comes from the belief that the phase of the moon influences mental mental instability or stability. Now, I have a question about that. And this is definitely not rhetorical, especially to you teachers on the phone. This idea of lunatic is always spoken to someone being adversely affected by the moon. In other words, being deemed to be insane or losing their mind. Have you ever experienced anyone who was deemed to be a lunatic because the moon was full and they were acting totally out of a character in terms of them being, their actions rather being expressive of insanity? Have any of you experienced anyone in that state?
Yes.
Who's the
Well,
yes?
not me myself, but I had a relative was telling about their mom, because I think their mom has Alzheimer's, and when I've talked to them, they say, yeah, when the moon is full, they kind of act different, very different. I mean, they're kind of out of their minds per se. I'm can't find the words to say, but they're not, they act as really awkward when there's a full moon. But this person has Alzheimer's.
And that's a different state of what I'm asking about, because the way lunatic is used is not talking about someone who
Okay.
is experiencing brain trauma already. It's talking
Okay,
about people whose character change or they become they become more unstable mentally, that would make them appear to be insane. The things that happen with Alzheimer's is a totally different concept and a totally different action. But I'm not saying, Lamont, that they're not influenced by the energy of the moon. I'm not saying that at all. They could very well be. but the way that lunatic is used in our colloquial language is that when the full moon, when the cycle of the moon is full, then people begin to lose their mental stability. Has anyone experienced that?
Good morning, this is Barbara. I remember in the emergency room, staff used to talk a lot about what happens when there's a full moon, i.e. the knife and gun club really get active. In other words, there are a lot more fights. People lose their not their minds, but they get angry. They ordinarily would not be fighting, or ordinarily would not be overwhelmed enough that they would take such a final kind of action like knifing someone or killing or shooting someone. But during full moon, there were a lot more increased examples of people coming in with those types of injuries. That it was just an observation that the staff noticed
Thank you.
over time.
I have a question. My question is, during the course of observation, were they males or females?
Not sure.
Okay, the reason I asked that is because when you made those statements about the observations, the first thing
I'm sorry. Did you mean were the perpetrators males or females,
yes,
or the staff males or females?
yeah, no, the perpetrators.
Usually it involved more males.
Okay, that makes a difference.
That's interesting to me. This is Audrey, because as a teacher, I heard those kinds of stories too. When there's a full moon, teachers tend to say things like, you know, it's a rowdy day in the classroom or something like that, and it's usually males.
Yes, ma'am.
Interesting.
I have something.
Hello.
My father,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. My father was a policeman with Richland, not Charleston County, and he would say on the nights of full moon or close to the full moon, he's like, it's gonna be a long night. There were far more arrests, far more usually male individuals that ended up having to go to jail. Or what he would say is they would lose their mind and not reason through what they're doing, and they would end up incarcerated.
Make sure your phones are muted, please. There was someone else about to speak.
It was me, Mary.
Uh-huh.
As a former ER social worker, I dreaded going to work full moon because I knew that it was going to be chaotic, and it really was. You had people who were off of their psych meds for whatever reason, were acting out. There were also a lot of violence going on with with trauma and all of that. So, and I was at Memorial downtown. So it was not a happy sight when we had that. And the psychiatric hospitals would be full because you couldn't get anybody in because everybody was trying to get in. So yeah, when I looked at the moon, I said, oh man. But now I can look at it and enjoy it. But before, it was like, oh shucks, I don't know what I'm gonna see tonight. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My mom was an ER nurse too when I was a kid, and I remember similar stories. I wonder too, and this just might be my memory as a child, but seems like most of the violence and stuff that she talked about happened during the hot months. It was either summer or either in the middle of a heat wave or something as well, not only just a full moon. Is that part of you guys' observation, or is it maybe just how I remember things?
I'm trying to think. I think that the increase in violence during the hotter months is because more people are in the streets, more people are out than they are in the wintertime. Because if I'm thinking right, it also happened during those summer months, whether it was 100 degrees or whether it was 85 degrees. With the more people that were out, the more interactions you had, and the more interactions resulted in violence. That was my observation. So, I'm not saying it wasn't, but this thing with the full moon is fascinating to me, as I see it is with most of us, if not all of us, because the idea of the lunatic and the idea of the violence being perpetrated primarily by males. I think that is extremely significant. And go ahead, Audrey.
But the one thing I'm wondering is, so how did women get the rap of being hysterical based on menstrual cycles and the moon and all of that?
Projection.
It's just interesting that it's almost like it was projected on us.
It was. And you responded. So, some of the women responded in kind because that energy was pushed in their direction and they absorbed it, as they do energy from males on other issues. But this one to me is very interesting because the male has determined how a woman should feel when she's having a menstrual cycle. The male has removed the sacredness from the menstrual cycle. The male has made the female feel like she is dirty during the course of a menstrual cycle. The male feels like a menstrual cycle should only come when he determined it should be, or when he was away, or when he was not feeling like he wanted to have intercourse. We have not had any healthy discussions in this country at all about the sanctity of the menstrual cycle. Now, maybe I'm a different kind of male, but I have been going to the store to purchase sanitary napkins since I was like 10, 11 years old. And it never bothered me, even though the other boys would pick at me about it, but I didn't care. That's what I did. And as a father, it was nothing for me to pick up sanitary napkins and tampons for my girls. I had no problem with that. However, I did encounter men who looked at me strangely, like I wasn't supposed to be doing that. And their look told me everything about them. I do believe that if you cannot respect the menstrual cycle, you have no respect for the woman who's having the cycle. I also believe that we are this way in terms of masculinity because that's all we have been told all of our lives. And now we need to look at it for the sacredness that it is. And that will within itself bring a clearer understanding to the necessity of it, the purpose of it, and it will also serve to eliminate one of those negative factors that exists between the female and the male. Because all of this from the male is related to having sex. Let's just face it. That's what it's related to. And at that point, I do believe that the woman who is on her cycle and the male treated her negatively because she's on her cycle says that she's only her only purpose is for his sexual pleasure. And of course, that's in itself insanity. So maybe that the moon is voicing that by virtue of how the minds are influenced by the moon, meaning that that violence is already there towards menstrual cycle and is acted out during the full moon because of the amount of energy that is released from the moon into the earth. Because the moon itself represents transformation and renewal, and the cycles of the moon speaks to the cycle of life. So all of these things, oh, and the moon, 28 days as the menstrual cycle. So all of these things are factors that speak to the idea of lunatic. And at some point today or tomorrow evening, I would definitely want to talk about the sacredness of the menstrual cycle. So, questions or comments?
I have a comment, Pastor.
Um,
I'll yield.
no, I yield. I've already spoken once.
We were sitting here listening, having a sidebar on the moon and the moon's representation as our full potential. And just now, as you were speaking and talking about how much like the moon, women's cycles are misaligned or maligned, how the moon and the fullness of the moon and the potential that it can bring is sometimes maligned. I do wonder sometimes if the full potential, like how Audrey was saying of our boys in the classroom, like it's going to be a rowdy day, are they being maligned because they're just acting in their full potential that they haven't necessarily been given the opportunity to maximize in that environment? So I'm seeing a different parallel, like the same way women are maligned. How is the moon and that potential energy being maligned?
I believe that the response is to enter the energy, whether it's the moon, the sun, wherever it originates. The response to it is based upon our inner beliefs about that subject. For example, I believe that the young men in the room are responding to masculine energy. And when I say masculine energy, I'm talking about the adult masculine energy and how it seeks to influence menstrual cycle in a negative way. And that's how I do believe it's passed on from generation to generation, because we have not recognized the origin of it is in masculinity. And I do believe also that as we speak to it and understand that the males are actually rejecting the positivity of the influence of the moon on a menstrual cycle, we have opportunity now to alter that by virtue of putting it in the macro and getting a better understanding of it. Make sense, then, Regina?
It does. I do also wonder, though, like, is it a valid perception that the moon brings us into our full potential? Like, it represents us, like another side of us that we're not necessarily. What'd you say?
That we necessarily act upon in our everyday living. Like sometimes I guess that we have personality, well, not necessarily personalities, but we have traits of energies that we don't necessarily portray on an everyday basis. But sometimes when nature presents itself in a way that we can't control, it sometimes deems us out of control because we haven't been taught to express it, because it only comes out like that once a month, or that every now and then, or when certain things get into place. I guess my question would be, how can we teach our children that's acting out in the classroom because of this moon? How can we figure out what it is in between that phase?
Um, I, I think one of the difficulties with that is the mindset that we have about the moon. The mindset that we have about the moon is that it's feminine, which it is, and it influences menstrual cycle, which it does. But we don't talk about how the moon has an influence on masculinity, on the mindset of males as well. And as a result of that, there has been no effort to teach our young men or our elderly men or in between anything about being able to embrace the energy of the moon as opposed to rebelling against its influence, and without even knowing that you're rebelling against the influence. And that did not start in the last 50 years. That's been the case forever and a day in terms of how the moon has been a negative, it can be a negative influence in the lives of men, and men making it a negative influence in the lives of females by challenging the validity or the necessity of a cycle. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Pastor, I have
This is Audrey again.
a comment.
Regina and company, I hear what you're saying. And I think that in the school structure that we have right now, there's not going to be a way for those things to be taken into consideration, because I mean, it just won't happen in the structure that is in place right now. I mean, it takes a well-informed teacher to sort of realize all those things, but you know, with all the pressures that teachers have to be the mama, the nurse, the teacher, the social worker, all of that, sometimes, you know, the kids fall through the cracks. So I think that because of all of that, schools just won't allow that kind of instruction to take place, just because of the way it's structured and all the pressures that are on teachers already.
In addition to the pressures that you talked about, there's the pressure of sexuality. Anything that pertains to sexuality in a discussion of menstrual cycles and the moon's influence, they do. And especially in red states, that's not going to happen. But anyway, I think it was Kathy.
It was.
Okay.
It was me, Kathy. One of the things, and I agree with what Audrey just said and what I was going to interject, and I'm glad she spoke before I did, because, and I'm looking at the book, The Spirit of Intimacy. In Western civilization, we do look to the schools to fill in all the gaps and to be the parent, the teacher, the everything else. But in looking at the book, The Spirit of Intimacy, the village, the community taught the kids. And they call that the period of initiation. For a boy, the initiation period started at puberty, where he had older mentors to talk to him about, truthfully talk to him about sexuality and becoming a man and just sex and intimacy and ritual, whatever the ritual is in your community. And for the girl, it started at her first menstrual cycle. And the mentoring didn't end at those times. It continued because they were teaching them the ritual. They called the girl during the time that she was going through her cycle. They even refer to that as her time of mooning. That's the term they use for the menstrual cycle that the girl is going through. And so what we are missing in Western civilization is that intimate piece of where we are now mentoring our kids at the right time to show them who they are, to tell them to love their bodies. We're not looking at, we don't care how you identify, but love who you are. and just to teach them the intimate details of understanding and walking in truth. And just what I mean by that, truthfully having real discussions, because kids are going to have real questions. They don't sugarcoat. When they have a question, you got to be willing to be the adult in the room and answer that question truthfully, instead of shying away and saying, we're not going to talk about that, or getting all religious on them and not giving them the right answer. So I think it's very important that piece, when Audrey said that piece of that book resonated with me, because they call that in the African village the initiation period. And it didn't say how long it lasted. They told the month that it started for girls and when the initiation began. They didn't mention when it started for boys, other than when they reached the age of puberty. But they had a core of men or a core of women who took them and just nurtured them and helped them to understand their bodies and to see who they are and to walk them through all of these things. It even talks about with the women during that time of mooning or during that time of the menstrual cycle, she could go to the ash circle, mostly invited by her sisters. She would invite other women to come and form that circle around her and nurture her and rock with her and dance with her and just emote with her all the feelings that she's going through her body to help her to understand. Men could come, but only by invitation only. All of these things are things that our culture has lost because we have been westernized in our thinking. So when we put it back in the homes, in the villages, in the communities where we become our brother's keepers, and the mentoring groups and the things that we form in the communities are real talk, where you're really taking the time to really just be there and show up. Because as a former school counselor, young men, they have questions about their identity. They want to sit. If they know you will sit and listen to them, they have questions. They understand sometimes they feel out of control. They want help understanding that. Now, I mean, young girls too, they sometimes feel out of control. But all of these things, in my opinion, go back to the sense of community. And it takes an enlightened person to be that community. And I feel like where we are in our discussion and where we're walking in truth right now and understanding that we're growing in truth, we are becoming those who will be mentors to those who follow us, so that we can show them who they are and the power in who they are. And it won't be so chaotic for them as they're going through puberty or going into the menstrual cycle period of a young girl's life. It just helps settles everything down and helps them to make sense of it all. And it's a lot more contained in that chapter. I just kind of summarized some of the things that was pulled from there. But I think the difference is in Eastern and Western civilization and our thought process and our upbringing. And now that we're getting back to the roots and understanding the whole concept of the motherland and who we are as a result of the motherland, I think we are better equipped now to make the differences that we're talking about than we've ever been. And I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I?
Check this. George,
Oh.
Matthew.
I yield. Go ahead.
Okay. Keep elders are both females and males, because most of the time when we read that word elder, we think it's males only. It is not. This is what I wanted to interject. A whole church, not a whole church, I'm sorry, a large number of people in the church turned against me in particular, because I was teaching young females and males about sexuality and how to respond to it in their when their bodies were screaming, when the hormones rather from their bodies were screaming for each other for an outlet, and the church doesn't want it. We taught it in the association, and the church pretty much excommunicated us from the association from teaching it. And the next thing is that this particular church voiced their disapproval of me because I had taught it, and they even lied about it in order to make sure that I was not the person who spoke to those kids again. So I'm seeing very clearly that it's not just the school system that won't allow it. The church won't allow it either. George?
Yes.
Thank you, George, for yielding.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say I appreciate, Kathy, your remarks with regards to Western society indoctrination with regards to not only sexuality, but in terms from a spiritual perspective. And I think that the role of cultural in education needs to be that where, we can have the opportunity to mentor, to youth and mentor to each other in terms of addressing the subject of sexuality. Because in school, again, there's things that are just not talked about or discussed. And I know coming up, as a teenager, I was very fortunate to be a part of an association where we had a youth services center that youth could go to talk to elders. And when I say elders, it was part of the Boys and Girls Club, but there were men that we were able to have discussions about with regards to our health and those aspects of maturing. And so I'm deeply, grateful to hear that we're having this conversation because again, there's some, youth who don't have the opportunity to be aware of what you may face when you go to college or what you may face when you go to the Job Corps or any place that would involve you to be in an atmosphere where you're around others and that initiation of just being in a place where you don't have some foundation. So I think that this is, an important topic and discussion, in terms of how we have the opportunity to spiritually have a better understanding and not be judgmental, but having the conversations that we need to have. So, just the role of culture in education is important. And it's not just the academia, and that has its purpose and place. But I think sometimes it's just that straight talk about recovering from a situation or that straight talk in terms of being able to talk to an elder, whether it's a male or female, in terms of conversations that we don't have. I can recall coming up, in high school when you talk about the menstrual cycle, of a female, where again there's experiences that, we all have, as teenagers, but just, not being aware of what we're discussing now and not knowing back then that it can cause anger, it can cause confusion, it can cause division when we're not taught, what is being discussed today. So I really appreciate the conversation, but I think as Kathy mentioned in terms of the initiation, as far as the uh the Dagara people, the Dakara tribe, it's important that, we have those type of discussions culturally versus academically. I'm done.
And George, I thank you because I do believe that we're having the purpose of us having these discussions now is for that. As Kathy and you have mentioned, our insight of our culture that we're receiving as a result of looking at the nuances of the motherland brings us to a place where we're more insightful into in speaking about these things. One of the things that the book on intimacy speaks about is not only the sacredness of it, but it also speaks about the amount of energy, the power that is in play when a woman is on her menstrual cycle, where she's menstruating, she has access to an energy, to energies, a energy source rather, that is extremely powerful, and it speaks about it having the power to heal. But healing is not just bodily healing; it's also mental, emotional. So, with us returning to our roots, it is important for us to begin to look at not only the menstrual cycle, but all the cycles of life from through the eyes of our Kushite ancestors. Ron?
I think I see something here and I want to bring it up and see what you guys think. I want to read something to you, see what your thoughts are here. This is from The Spirit of Intimacy. It says, during menstruation, sacred sexuality can happen with a woman depending on the kind of energy that exists between partners. The man must work at rising his energy to match that of the woman. If not, he could suffer from such an encounter. He could become disempowered. One elder pointed out that the risk is similar to sharing the intimate space or working on your anger. Your anger will transfer to the other person and backfire on you. So I guess I'm looking at that, and it is from a sexual place, but how often do we as men make considerations to her mood where she is emotionally,
Hold on one
spiritually?
second, Ron. Would you mute your phone, please? Ron is coughing. Thank you. Go ahead, Ron.
I would just, it just kind of stuck out on me that, you being in a certain place and she being in another place, we as men, how often do we give thought to that? Uh, you know, because it not only talks about it can be damaging, it can cause an imbalance, and I thought that was this being disempowered. I'm not quite sure what that means, but when a man feels what he feels and ready to do what he wants to do, he's not always considerate of where she is. So what they're talking about is creating a space for this to happen, create being one-mindedness when something like this happens. And I just wanted to know if we had read that and given it any thought. Anybody have any comments on it? Because I thought that was interesting.
Anyone have any comments on that? Maybe Ron, that speaks to, excuse me, 1 second, please. How how men relate to females, their spouses, their girlfriends or whatever, how they relate to them. Always finding something wrong with her means that your power has not been, you have not raised your power to a level of understanding. You see where I'm coming from?
And it's damaging to the man is what this
And
is
that's what
saying.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. It said nothing about being damaging to her. And see, if you do not have respect for femininity, then that means that you are functioning on low grade power, and your power needs to be your low grade energy rather, and your energy level needs to be raised in order for you to be able to see the necessity of balance between you and her. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So, so the reason it doesn't, I do believe, speak to the women is because, especially now in our society now, masculinity feels like it must always dominate femininity. And in order to make itself feel good, what does it do? It tries to belittle everything that femininity, that involves femininity. And I'm projecting myself as being a strong man. I'm projecting myself as being a man of my house rather than a man in. That kind of thing. The negativity of it all speaks loudly to me, anyway. That your resonance with the universe is at a very low level. Your energy is at a very low level. And in order to raise it, you have to be in synchronicity with the femininity, or in your that sense of femininity, or the presence of femininity in your life. I'm done.
Disempowered sounds pretty serious. It's not something that's going to cause physical pain, but it can not only create a gulf between you and your partner, it sounds like something that takes the focus of you seeing who you are.
Uh,
And I
I
think that is,
think you go further than that too, Ron. Inclusive of that, it goes to, because it doesn't stop with your spouse or your partner, right? It extends itself to the broader spectrum of femininity. And the broader the spectrum is that you are an adversary to, the less resonance you have with the universe. So the weaker you are, the more powerless you become. And at the same time, because of this masculine dominated society, we have been convinced that that is the type of thing that makes us strong, when in reality, it really isn't. The only thing that makes anyone strong is vulnerability. If you don't open yourself up so that you can receive, not only in a positive way, but also in a way that is adverse to you. Adversity makes you strong. Someone always patting you on your back and telling you how great you are, that doesn't make you strong. That builds your ego and makes your head swell. But when you have to go through adversity, it strengthens you. Right? Whether that adversity is coming from someone who you consider to be an enemy, or whether it's coming from your partner, or whether it's coming from any place at all, it strengthens you. And you're going to face adversity. The question is whether or not you're going to allow that adversity to damage you, or whether you're going to embrace that adversity and gain strength from it. No one can ruin your day unless you put your day in their hands to run. Your day is under their authority if they can run it. It's like being in love with someone and they're not in love with you. You have allowed yourself to be put in that predicament because you knew they weren't in love with you, so you need to deal with yourself in that matter. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Because you know when somebody loves you back. But anyway.
I'll say this and I'll hush, but
No, you don't hush now.
the other part that I thought was interesting is it talked about the elder likened it to he being angry and trying to couple with her, be with her, how that backfires on you when that energy is transferred to her, it backfires on you. And you think about the violence in the world, not only against women by their partners, but just the violence, period. It really explains a lot. Intimacy is at least at some degree non-existent in America, and which means it's certainly that way across the world as well. Certain because maybe because we don't know how to couple, we don't know how to have intimacy.
Well,
It just answered a lot of questions to me.
it does, in that I remember the first time I used the word intercourse in the pulpit, and it was at the first church I pastored. I thought they were going to have a heart attack. Afterwards, they meaning the deacons in the church, that had felt like they needed to correct me, and all you know about how that went. It's because we see it as being something dirty. And where did we get that idea? That intimacy, intercourse, sexuality, that is dirty. Where did we get that idea? There are those who may be thinking that we're not dealing with, we're not talking about the divine positions that we have in this earth based upon Scripture. However, I beg to differ. The problem that we have had is that we have been Bible focused without any understanding of what the Bible's saying. However, when we become focused on who we are and what it's saying to us, it is at that point that we begin to see something totally different. So I wanted to get that clear, that there is never a time when we are not talking about divinity. You cannot be spiritual and live your life aside from spirituality, aside from divinity. Every second of every day of your life, you are engaged with yourself, which means that you engage with divinity. And how you embrace that is totally up to you. So our talking about this is extremely important, extremely important. I've heard males say things like, when males are acting a certain way, man, why you acting like that? Your period on? And that's derogatory. And those kinds of things that we have to make sure that we separate ourselves from in terms of our thoughts, because what we think also determines how we act. If it were not for a minister cycle, there wouldn't be life. The menstrual cycle simply prepares for birth, make preparations for pregnancy. So I don't get it, how you can speak in a derogatory manner about a menstrual cycle, of someone who's having a menstrual cycle. I don't get that. So if you look at the scriptures, if you read them for what's written on the page, you will see a manipulative part of it that causes us to believe that is something that is dirty. If you look at, if you listen at men who say that women should not be in the pulpit, the first thing reason they give you is because her menstrual cycle may be on. So what does her menstrual cycle have with unholiness? Why does it deem, rather, the space in the pulpit being unclean? If you say it is unclean, then that means that she's unholy. And if she's unholy, how can you say that her womb has been set aside for a specific purpose when holiness speaks to that? So that also went from women can't be in the pulpit because of menstrual cycle. Women can't wear pants to the church, which is in the building. All those crazy things that have been embraced by Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they are still in place today. And today what we are doing is teaching our children. We're teaching our people. We're putting things in the macro that changes the view of those things that have held us back, or that has served to separate us, male and female, separate us as a people, separate us as religion does. All religions separate people. All religions put people in a category. And the category that they put them is chosen by those who are in leadership in those settings. I'm done. Anything else wrong?
Just thinking.
Okay. Anyone else? Comments? Questions? I think we've had a brisk discussion today. I think it's one of the strongest discussions that we've had because of what we are addressing. We cannot purport to be spiritual if we are unwilling to address all things that pertains to life in this body. I don't think that that we can really purport to be spiritual entities and know who we are if we frown on things simply because they make us uncomfortable. Like the discomfort that that we had yesterday when Myra kind of sort of told us we were Antichrist. Even though it was discomforting, it was necessary, and embracing it was necessary. So it doesn't matter how discomforting it is. The truth in the long run brings comfort to everything. That is true. So
Would you
Question.
agree? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
sorry.
Rob.
I've talked enough. Go ahead, Audrey.
That just brought up a question in my mind. If and this is for people who are against women, and I'm saying that in a real general sense, are they also Antichrist?
no, they are not Antichrist in the regard that we are. In the way that we are, they are proponents of that concept of Christ, because the concept of Christ is masculine, totally masculine, and antithetical to the cosmic mother.
But in the true sense of the word Christ consciousness, they would be Antichrist, right?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's all I was wondering. Ron, go ahead.
They anti us.
Yeah. I guess what I was thinking listening to this is everything it seems like that we discuss comes back to racism. It comes back between the African and the European mindset. Whether you're talking about religion, whether you're talking about misogyny, whether you're talking about anything that comes up. And why do I say that? If you look at the people of color that were in this place before there were any Europeans, women were embraced. Women were part of councils. Women were heads of communities. Their voices were heard. And it seems like everything that the African embraced, the opposite was put out there. So the empowerment of women was totally taken away, to the fact that they were not only, they were almost made into, I can't use the word slaves, but servants in a very harsh way. And it was done, in my opinion, because the African embraced femininity more than people thought was necessary. And so it even became law to keep women in a servitude kind of mindset. And so to me, everything we talk about, whether it's talk about greed, I want what you have, I'm going to steal this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to treat my women, your women, certain kind of way, women are going to be property or whatever, it all comes back to racism.
Well, Ron, it is impossible to speak about policies, politics, spirituality, or any of that without dealing with on the basis of racism, because the world is in the shape that is in because of racism. So when we look at this as it really is, it's impossible to talk about it without that. And that is one of the reasons we have people to say things like, oh, here we go again, racist, here we go with this race thing again. And the reason they do that is because guilt hits them. They know that they're culpable in this. So we have been less apt to talk about it in a meaningful way because we have been made guilty for telling the truth. Makes sense? We have been made to feel guilty because we're telling the truth. And that yoke has been long gone. And you have to throw it off you individually before you can do it collectively. I do believe this with everything in me, that the reason the church, most specifically, the African church stays what it is because it does not have anything in its place. It does not have any other spiritual avenue to travel. And what we are doing is putting in the macro a roadmap to travel towards spirituality while at the same time leaving religion behind. And that journey to spirituality can begin in those buildings, depending on who's doing the teaching and how it's being done. To walk into a place and say, Jesus didn't exist, you lost everybody already. It has to start at a place where they are. And what I've seen is that if we're going to replace this racist religious policy with true spirituality, then we have to have a way to do that. And my example to that is this. I'm standing in this congregation, and all of these are church people, and y'all know what I mean by that. It's not negative, it's just who they are. And this lady says that if we sing about how much we love each other, because I had made the statement that there are no songs in church that talk about how we love each other, about loving Jesus. She said that we would be worshiping each other. And my response to that was, well, what is worship? And of course I defined it. And when we finished talking, she saw what I was saying in terms of this idea of worship, of being submissive to who you are. And how did I get her to the place of saying that she had to submit to the divinity that she is? How did I do that? I went back to the beginning. The scripture says that we are created in the image and likeness of Elohim. And if we are in that likeness, that means that we have attributes and characteristics. And if we don't submit to those attributes and characteristics, then we are not worshiping. And I mean, they lit up, and the whole body realized at that moment that we are indeed divine. So what am I saying? That attitude has shifted some. That's how we do it. When we come in contact with people, rather than saying things that's going to push them away, we walk them through it. We walk them through it in a very simple way so that they can begin to see it. This being put in the macro as well also helps us to have more open-mindedness when we have conversations with other people in regards to whether it's religion, scripture, or spirituality. I'm done. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, I express my appreciation for your presence, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. Any questions you may have or comments, please bring them then. So enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, and thank you for your input.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, family.
Thank you, everyone.